You hear one dark lyric, reach for the skip button, and assume you already know what the song means. But Psalm 88 makes that judgment harder than it sounds. It is called a song and a psalm, yet it speaks openly about sorrow, isolation, and darkness. So maybe the first question is not simply what words appear in a song, but what the song is doing with them. Christians often want a clean yes or no answer when it comes to music, but Scripture does not always give us a simple blacklist. In 1 Corinthians 6:12, Paul asks whether something is beneficial and whether it is beginning to master us. That changes the question. A song can be free of obvious profanity and still deserve careful thought, while another can mention pain or darkness without celebrating either one. Discernment has to go deeper than genre, mood, or a few isolated words. It has to ask what the song means, what it is doing to you, and what role it is taking in your life. It also has to ask whether the Bible passage being used to judge it actually says what we think it says. And sometimes, your freedom has to be weighed against the conscience of the person beside you. In this video, we are going to walk through 5 questions that can help you test music without turning faith into fear. The last one may change how you think about Christian freedom itself. Question 1 is this: what is the song actually doing with what it describes? 2 songs can describe the same broken relationship and leave you with completely different impressions. One may make betrayal look glamorous. Another may expose the grief betrayal caused. Same subject, different moral direction. That is the distinction Psalm 88 helps us see. It contains suffering, loneliness, death, and darkness. But the writer is not celebrating those things. He is bringing pain honestly before God. Describing something is not the same as approving it. So when you hear a difficult lyric, do not stop at the first disturbing word. Ask what the song is doing with what it describes. Is it making sin look attractive or showing what sin costs? Is the singer boasting, grieving, warning, confessing, or simply telling what happened? Are you being encouraged to imitate what you hear or to witness its consequences? Psalm 88 is not permission to excuse every dark song. It is a reminder to listen carefully enough to know what a song actually means. A Christian should care about the words, but the words have to be heard in their full setting. Content matters. The way that content is presented tells you what it means. Question 2 gets more personal. Is this helping me or is it beginning to master me? Maybe the lyrics are clean. There is no occult message, no explicit sexual content, and no obvious attack on God. You enjoy the song and still wonder whether keeping it is wise. That is where a simple, forbidden or allowed question becomes too small. In 1 Corinthians 6:12, Paul says that not everything that is permissible is beneficial, and he adds that he will not be mastered by anything. The passage is not about a playlist, so we should not pretend Paul was secretly writing a rule about modern music. But the principle gives a Christian 2 useful questions. Is this helping me? And is this beginning to control me? Then 1 Corinthians 10:23 adds another thought. Something may be permissible and still fail to build you up. A few verses later, in 1 Corinthians 10:31, Paul points everyday choices toward the glory of God. Again, his immediate subject is not music. The value is in what these verses teach about choices that cannot always be settled by asking, where is the verse that forbids this? Think about how that changes the way you examine a song. You may be able to listen without feeling convicted, but does it leave you stronger in what is good? Can you turn it off easily, or has it begun to command your attention whenever you are bored, angry, lonely, or stressed? Does it help you become more truthful, patient, disciplined, and loving? Or does it keep feeding attitudes you are already trying to leave behind? Philippians 1:9-10 describes love growing in knowledge and discernment so believers can recognize what is best. That is a higher goal than merely staying 1 inch away from what is clearly wrong. Christian maturity is not only learning what you are allowed to do, it is learning to notice what is worth carrying forward. And different believers may answer some of these questions differently. That does not make the questions useless. It means you have to answer them before God with honesty, rather than searching for the easiest excuse. A mature question is not only, "Can I?" It is also, "What is this doing to me?" Question 3 turns the test back on the warning itself. Does the Bible actually say this? Or are we applying a broader principle? And that question applies even to this video. Acts 17:11 praises the people in Berea because they received Paul's message eagerly and still examined the scriptures to see whether what they heard was true. Paul was an apostle, yet the Bereans were still commended for checking the text for themselves. Receiving teaching seriously and checking it carefully are not enemies. A Bible verse can be completely true, while the conclusion someone draws from it still needs testing. Ask what the passage actually says. Then ask whether its broader teaching is being applied fairly to music. Take 1 Corinthians 6:12. Paul is not talking about playlists, artists, or headphones. He is speaking about Christian freedom and refusing to be mastered by anything. That truth can help us think about entertainment, but that is different from claiming the verse directly forbids a particular song. The same distinction matters when Paul discusses food and conscience elsewhere in 1 Corinthians. Those passages can teach us about freedom and responsibility toward others, but first-century disputes about food are not modern music rules. So when you hear a strong warning, notice whether the speaker has shown the connection or simply assumed it. A careful teacher should be able to say, "This passage speaks directly about this," or "I am applying a biblical truth to a modern choice." That distinction does not weaken biblical authority. It protects it. It also gives you room to receive correction without surrendering your responsibility to examine what you hear. The stronger the warning, the more carefully its biblical connection should be explained. Question 4 is about what happens when music changes how you feel. Feeling better after a song does not automatically prove spiritual health, and it does not prove that music has replaced God. A 2024 review covering 47 studies found that people use music in connection with mood, stress, reflection, and coping. So yes, music can affect how we feel. But research answers only a limited question. It can describe emotional effects. It cannot tell a Christian whether a particular song is morally wise, spiritually helpful, or becoming too important. The spiritual question comes after the relief. Maybe you come home after a hard commute and play an album that helps you calm down. Maybe you sit alone with earbuds after an argument because a song gives words to feelings you cannot explain yet. Neither choice gives us the answer by itself. Ask what that comfort helped you do next. Did the music help you face the sadness instead of hiding it? Did it make it easier to pray honestly, speak with someone you trust, or think clearly about what happened? Or did it become a way to delay every difficult conversation, silence every uncomfortable thought, and avoid action that still needs to be taken? The same song could serve very different purposes on different nights. Your emotional response is real, but it is not the whole answer. Psychology can study how people use music for mood and coping. It cannot measure the place music holds in your relationship with God. That requires honest spiritual self-examination, not fear and not easy assumptions. You do not have to call every moment of musical comfort idolatry. You also should not assume that anything comforting is automatically good for you. Comfort is a function. Dependence is a relationship. Do not confuse the two. Question 5 moves beyond you. What does your music choice do to the person beside you? You may have a clear conscience about a song and still need to think about the people in the room. Freedom is personal, but love is never private. So the final question is no longer only, do I enjoy this? It is, what does love require from me here? Romans 14 gives us a clear example. Paul was writing to believers who disagreed about food and other practices. Some felt free to eat, others did not. Paul refused to let either side turn that disagreement into contempt. He warned the strong not to put a stumbling block in another believer's way, but he also warned the cautious not to judge those whose conscience differed. Both warnings matter. Christian freedom can be real, and Christian care can still limit how that freedom is used. 1 Corinthians 8 makes the point even more concrete. The immediate issue was food offered to idols, not music. Some believers understood that the food itself did not gain spiritual power simply because it had been offered in a pagan setting. Yet Paul still asked them to consider the conscience of a brother or sister who might be pulled back toward something harmful. His concern was not fear. It was love willing to give up a right when using that right could wound someone else. That works in both directions today. One believer should not say, "I am free to listen, so your struggle does not matter." Another should not say, "This makes me uncomfortable, so God must forbid it for everyone." A clear conscience does not give permission to become careless. A sensitive conscience does not give permission to become controlling. Sometimes love means turning a song off. Sometimes humility means refusing to make your personal conviction the rule for every Christian around you. Take one song you listen to often and run it through these 5 questions. What does it really mean? What is it doing to you? Are you using Scripture fairly? What role does it play when you are stressed, lonely, or hurting? And what does love require when someone else is affected? You do not need to delete your whole playlist out of fear, and you do not need to defend every song simply because you enjoy it. The goal is not to fear music. It is to choose with honesty, wisdom, and love. Which of these 5 questions is hardest for you to answer?